Welcome back to our channel where hidden truths and untold stories come to life. When most of us hear about the descendants of Adam and Eve, we instantly think of the well-known tale of Cain and Abel. But what about the daughters of Adam and Eve? The Bible only whispers about them, leaving us with more questions than answers. Who were they? How many were there? Why does their story remain so mysteriously hidden in the shadows? Today, we're going to uncover the story that no one seems to tell the daughters of Adam and Eve. What role did they play in shaping history? What secrets might they have carried lost to time but waiting to be revealed? This journey will take us through ancient scriptures such as the Book of Jubilees and explore traditions that shed light on these forgotten figures. Curious to know more, leave a comment with 7 if you're ready to dive deeper into the mysterious lives of these women. Trust me, what we uncover today might just change how you see the Bible forever. Stay with us because the next chapter of this story is about to get even more intriguing. The mysterious daughters of Adam and Eve. The story no one tells. Few have ever ventured deep enough into the ancient scrolls to uncover the hidden story of Adam and Eve's daughters. A thread so delicate and shrouded in mystery that even seasoned theologians and passionate seekers of Scripture often pass it by without a second glance. Isn't it peculiar how when we open the book of Genesis, our attention is instantly captured by the dramatic saga of Cain, the anguished firstborn, and Abel, the gentle shepherd whose blood still cries out from the ground? Yet right there, subtly woven into the fabric of Genesis, is a line that whispers of secrets long ignored. Genesis 5:4-5 records something astonishing. After the birth of Seth, Adam continued to walk this earth for another 800 years. In that immense stretch of time, he fathered not only more sons but many daughters. Altogether, Adam's life reached a staggering 930 years before he finally returned to the dust. Have you ever paused to imagine what those centuries must have held? What were the names of these daughters, these forgotten women who shared the dawn of humanity? Could it be that their stories, though hidden from our sight, carried profound moments of joy, sorrow, and divine encounters that would have left us breathless had they been written down? Perhaps you've never considered that these daughters watched their parents struggle under the weight of Eden lost. Maybe they grew up hearing Eve's voice tremble when she spoke of a garden guarded by flaming swords, or saw Adam's eyes fill with longing when he described walking side by side with God in the cool of the day. Doesn't it stir something within you to wonder how these young women coped with a world that had so abruptly fallen from grace? And if the Bible chose to mention them, however briefly, could it be a gentle invitation to explore deeper, to realize that God's narrative often runs far wider and richer than what lies on the surface? In a way, doesn't it echo our own lives, full of people and moments that history may never record yet, each holding untold significance in God's grand design? Though the sacred pages of the Bible remain silent on the names of Adam and Eve's daughters, offering us no list to ponder or lineage to trace, the yearning to know more as echoed through generations. Isn't it striking that while we're told about Cain, Abel, and Seth by name, the identities of their sisters drift like shadows at the edge of Scripture? What if these unnamed women held stories that could change how we understand the earliest chapters of humanity? To peer beyond the biblical veil, many turn to ancient Jewish traditions and the intriguing Book of Jubilees, often called the Little Genesis. This text, nestled among the writings of the Old Testament Apocrypha, ventures into realms the canonical scriptures chose to leave uncharted. It speaks with confidence about the creation of the world, the shaping of Adam from dust and Eve from his very flesh, and then moves forward to retell the lives of figures we thought we already knew. Yet here in these passages that echo Genesis yet reach further, we discover the suggestion of names whispered across centuries that seek to give form to Adam and Eve's daughters. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to stand under the ancient sky, a sister of Cain or Seth, your laughter mingling with the wind as you walked beside the very first mother, or to listen as Eve recounted, perhaps by the flicker of a modest fire, how it felt to see God fashion the beasts of the field with his own hands? Could such stories have been carefully passed from mother to daughter down a fragile line of memory until they faded from human tongue altogether? Even though the Book of Jubilees isn't embraced as scripture by all, it still paints a hauntingly beautiful portrait of those early days, offering us hints of relationships and events that the main biblical record leaves untouched. In doing so, it quietly reminds us that God's dealings with humanity are far more vast and intricate than any single book could ever capture. Doesn't it stir something in your spirit to consider that entire lifetimes once unfolded beneath Eden's distant echo, shaping destinies that still ripple into our world today? Although the oldest surviving manuscript of the Book of Jubilees dates to around 700 BCE, this is merely a fragile echo, a copy of a text reaching back even further into the mists of time. Can you imagine how many hands must have carefully transcribed its words over countless generations, striving to preserve its revelations? Some scholars, drawn by its close narrative weave to Israel's chronicles, have wondered if it might have been penned by the scribe Ezra himself, that faithful restorer of the law after Israel's exile. Yet the Book of Jubilees boldly presents a different origin entirely, one that pulls us up Mount Horeb into a scene that feels almost otherworldly. According to its own testimony, it was Moses who received these words not from his own pondering heart, but from the mouth of an angel sent by God. Picture for a moment the lonely heights of Horeb, where Moses stood surrounded by raw rock and whispering wind. The Bible itself tells us in Exodus 34:28 that Moses remained there for 40 days and 40 nights, neither eating bread nor drinking water, wholly sustained by the very presence of God. Could it be that in those sacred hours, far removed from the distractions of mortal life, Moses was entrusted with truths so profound that only the heavens could reveal them? Given the astonishing age of the text, can we truly dismiss the possibility that Moses was indeed its author, transcribing heavenly secrets as they were poured into his spirit? The weight of this book upon Israelite culture was immense. Its teachings were not locked away in some dusty chamber, but copied and distributed among the people, shaping minds and guiding hearts. Doesn't that alone hint at its power? Even more compelling is how the Book of Jubilees threads itself into the greater tapestry of biblical mystery by referencing another enigmatic work, the Book of Enoch. This ancient text was so treasured by early Christians that many held it as sacred scripture, embedding it directly into their spiritual lives. Isn't it fascinating to consider that these books, often set aside today, once stood alongside the Torah and the Gospels in the hearts of believers? Perhaps this should stir us to pause before brushing aside the Book of Jubilees. After all, it recounts events that harmonize beautifully with the canonical stories we cherish. Might it hold keys that unlock deeper dimensions of the truths we thought we fully grasped? And if Moses truly stood on Horeb receiving these revelations, wouldn't that change the way we view every line of this ancient, almost forgotten narrative? Returning now to the earliest days of humanity, we find ourselves once again standing in the shadow of Adam and Eve, pondering the hidden branches of their family tree. While Genesis offers only a tantalizing glimpse mentioning unnamed sons and daughters, various ancient Semitic and Abrahamic traditions dare to venture further, striving to lift the veil on these long-forgotten figures. Isn't it remarkable how stories that danced on the lips of our spiritual ancestors continue to echo across millennia, inviting us to lean closer and listen? Among these traditions, we uncover the name of Adam and Eve's first daughter, Ion, a name that in Phoenician Hebrew holds the weighty meanings of both potency and vice. Can you sense the curious tension there of strength intertwined with moral complexity? This Aeon was not just a daughter, but also the sister and eventual wife of Cain, the restless son who would become infamous for spilling the blood of Abel. Could you imagine what it must have felt like to grow up in a world so freshly scarred by the loss of paradise, where family bonds were both sacred necessity and unavoidable fate? The Book of Jubilees pulls us even deeper into this hidden story, revealing that On bore children to Cain. One of these children was Enoch, a name that stands like a small bright torch in early Genesis. Scripture itself in Genesis 4:17 records that after Cain was banished, marked, and sent to wander the earth for his brother's murder, he nevertheless sought to anchor himself by building a city which he named after his son Enoch. Doesn't it stir something within you to think of Cain, driven from Eden's edge, hammering stones together in honor of his boy, perhaps hoping to carve out a future that might redeem his blood-stained past? Yet the mystery deepens. Across different ancient texts, including the hauntingly beautiful Cave of Treasures, this first daughter of Adam and Eve sometimes bears another name, Kelma. In these accounts, Kelma stands as both the eldest daughter of humanity's first parents and the devoted wife of Cain, forever woven into the fragile beginnings of civilization. How many tears, whispered confessions, or even silent dreams might have passed between them as they navigated a life exiled from the garden their parents once walked with God? Could it be that by tracing these tender, shadowed narratives so easily overlooked, we uncover not just facts about forgotten people, but truths about ourselves? About the way love, guilt, and the longing to build something lasting still shape our own journeys. Perhaps hidden in these fragments of ancient tradition lies a gentle reminder that even the earliest families wrestled with burdens and choices not so different from ours today. Ancient Semitic traditions reach back across the sands of time to tell us even more about the hidden daughters of Adam and Eve. According to these treasured accounts, the second daughter of the first human couple was named Azura. Her life, though only faintly sketched in these traditions, is interwoven with some of the Bible's most pivotal moments. Isn't it compelling to think that while Scripture gives us only the briefest hints of Adam and Eve's daughters, whispers of their stories have survived in the collective memory of early believers waiting for us to uncover them? Azura would become the wife of Seth, Adam and Eve's third son, the child born after the tragic death of Abel. Even Seth's name is heavy with divine meaning. In Hebrew, it carries the sense of compensation or appointed, capturing a profound theological truth. Seth was seen as the child who stood in Abel's place, a tender act of restoration by God for Adam and Eve's deep wound. Can you imagine the bittersweet joy that must have filled their hearts as they looked upon Seth's face, seeing in him both a painful reminder of Abel and a hopeful promise for the future? Seth's line would come to embody righteousness, in stark contrast to the darker path of Cain. From Seth's descendants would emerge Noah, the man chosen to preserve life through the flood that would one day cleanse the earth. In this way, Seth's life and choices became a channel through which humanity itself would be saved. Does it not stir awe within you to realize how the quiet obedience of one man could ripple out to safeguard all creation? The Book of Jubilees adds yet another layer of haunting detail to this family tapestry. It tells us that before Azura became Seth's wife, she was first wed to Abel. When Abel fell beneath his brother's jealous hand, Azura was left a young widow in a world already marred by bloodshed and loss. How her heart must have ached, carrying memories of a love so violently stolen away. But when Seth reached the fullness of manhood, he took Azura as his wife, forging a union that would birth a lineage destined to carry humanity forward through storms of divine judgment. From their marriage would flow the line that held fast to God when so many others turned aside, Might there be in Azura's story a quiet testimony to how even shattered beginnings can be gathered up by God and woven into a future overflowing with purpose? And if we let our thoughts drift for just a moment, if we imagine ourselves living in those earliest days, hearing Eve softly recount these tangled family bonds, would we not feel the fragile hope that God still walks with mankind even after Eden's gates were closed? Perhaps the stories of Azura and Seth whisper to us today, reminding us that no loss is beyond God's reach to redeem, and that sometimes the lines of destiny are drawn most clearly against the backdrop of sorrow. The Book of Jubilees, that haunting text so often relegated to dusty corners of ancient libraries, opens a door to details the canonical scriptures leave cloaked in shadow. According to its meticulous records, Azura was born during the 6th week of the 4th Jubilee, a way of counting time that seems almost otherworldly to our modern minds. Can you picture the fragile beginnings of humanity being carefully measured in weeks and jubilees, as if heaven itself were keeping a solemn calendar of every birth and bond? In those far-off days when the weight of Eden's loss still hung heavy in every breeze, Azura was given in marriage to her brother Seth during the 5th week of the 5th Jubilee. Their union was more than a simple joining of husband and wife. It was a thread tying humanity back to God's purpose, preserving a line through which righteousness would flow. Might it stir something tender within you to imagine a young Azura, perhaps with memories of Abel lingering in her heart, stepping into this new chapter with Seth, trusting that somehow divine mercy still overshadowed their fragile beginnings? In the 4th year of the 6th week, Azura brought forth a son named Enos, the next link in a lineage that would stand as a counterpoint to Cain's wandering descendants. The very naming of Enos, which carries the sense of frailty and mortal humanity, seems almost prophetic, acknowledging that while mankind had drifted far from Eden's gates, God still moved through these humble generations. Doesn't it humble you to think how God's plan marched on through ordinary births and simple family joys, even as sin's curse lingered over the earth? But the Book of Jubilees does not stop there. As Enos grew and entered the strength of manhood, he took his own sister Nome, also called Goma, the daughter born to Seth and Azura, as his wife. This happened in the 3rd week of the 5th Jubilee, further entwining the fragile human family in bonds both necessary and mysterious. Can you envision family gatherings in those earliest tense brothers and sisters whose very unions were required to carry humanity forward, perhaps whispering hopes of someday seeing the face of the God their parents once walked beside? In some quiet way, doesn't this story echo truths about how life today is still stitched together by relationships, fragile trust, and the hope that out of our imperfect union something enduring will arise? Even across the vast chasm of time, these ancient tales reach out to remind us that every life, every birth, every vow holds the potential to carry forward the promises of God, no matter how far we may feel from paradise. Enos, one of the cherished sons born to Seth and Azura, stands out in the ancient annals for more than simply continuing the fragile thread of humanity. He is remembered above all as a man whose heart was profoundly inclined toward God, a figure whose life signaled a stirring renewal of spiritual hunger upon the earth. Can you imagine how precious that must have been in an age still groaning under the weight of Eden's loss, where each new generation had to navigate a world so recently tainted by sin's shadow? The primary biblical account of Enos appears in Genesis 5, verses 6 through 11. There we learn that Seth, who was himself 105 years old when he fathered Enos, would go on to live another 807 years, blessing the earth with many more sons and daughters. Altogether, Seth's life spanned an astonishing 912 years before he finally returned to the dust from which his father Adam was once formed. Does it not humble you to think of lives so lengthy, stretching across centuries, witnessing the slow unfolding of God's mysterious plans? When Enos reached 90 years of age, he in turn became the father of Canaan. Yet Enos's life was marked by more than genealogies. He lived for an additional 815 years after Canaan's birth, bringing forth yet more sons and daughters until his own journey concluded at 905 years. But what sets Enos apart most vividly in Scripture is not merely the length of his days. In Genesis 4:26, we find a subtle yet profound note, "Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord." This simple statement suggests a revival of prayer, a collective turning of hearts upward, and many traditions see Enos himself as a spark for this awakening. Isn't it beautiful to consider how one man's devotion could kindle a fresh desire in countless souls to seek the Creator once more? The ancient Book of Jubilees, along with early Semitic Jewish traditions, helps us piece together even more of this intricate family tapestry. These texts remind us that while Cain married his sister On, thereby establishing the lineage that would bear his mark through the ages, Seth took his sister Azura as wife, securing the righteous line from which Enos would emerge. Through these unions, strange and necessary in humanity's infancy, the two distinct branches of Adam and Eve's descendants began to unfold. Can you almost picture those distant family gatherings where the stories of Abel's innocence, Cain's curse, and the hope carried by Seth's household were spoken in hushed voices around flickering fires? Might you feel the awe of standing alongside Enos as he raised his voice in prayer, lifting the name of God high in a world still learning how to worship? Perhaps these ancient lives whisper gently to our own hearts today, reminding us that even in times when faith seems faint or nearly forgotten, a single soul's devotion can reignite a generation's longing for God. You may find yourself pausing to ponder just how many children did Adam and Eve truly have. The sacred text offers us only a glimpse, noting that after Seth's birth, Adam lived another 800 years, during which he fathered sons and daughters. Genesis 5:4. Isn't it staggering to imagine a lifespan so vast, stretching nearly a full millennium, where the cycle of birth and new life continued year after year? In that immense stretch of time, how many tiny cries must have echoed across the first fields? How many little hands learned to gather fruit or build simple shelters under Adam's watchful eye? According to ancient traditions passed down through Jewish and early Christian circles, Adam and Eve possessed a fertility so extraordinary that it eclipses any natural bounds we know today. These writings portray them as uniquely blessed, or perhaps uniquely burdened with the ability to bring forth life in abundance far beyond modern understanding. Some of these old accounts suggest that Adam and Eve bore not just a handful, but literally hundreds of sons and daughters over the centuries. Can you imagine the gatherings, the laughter, the disputes, and the countless family stories that must have unfolded under their sprawling lineage? Perhaps these ancient traditions, while not detailed in our canonical scriptures, still hold a glimmer of truth that deepens our awe. They suggest a world freshly touched by the Creator's hand, where the command to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, Genesis 1:28, was not merely a distant instruction but a vivid daily reality for humanity's first family. Could you see yourself standing there amid their growing tribe, watching new faces arrive year after year, each one a fresh testament to life's resilience despite the curse that hung over Eden's gate? And doesn't it also whisper to us today, reminding us of how God's plans for multiplication and blessing often exceed anything we could measure or predict? In a way, every child born to Adam and Eve became both a sign of what had been lost in the garden and a fragile hope that one day, through this vast sea of descendants, restoration would come. Might this same promise of God's enduring purpose still echo in the story of each family, each generation, even our own? In our modern age, even the most astonishing tales of human fertility pale in comparison to what ancient traditions attribute to Eve. The Guinness World Records recognizes Valentina Vasilyeva, a Russian peasant woman from the 18th century, as holding the highest documented number of children ever born by a single mother. By all accounts, Valentina gave birth to an astonishing 69 surviving children, a figure that still leaves medical experts marveling. Over the course of 27 pregnancies, she delivered 16 pairs of twins, 7 sets of triplets, and 4 sets of quadruplets. Only 2 of her children are said to have died young, an almost inconceivable outcome given the times and circumstances. Doesn't it leave you breathless to consider what her household must have looked like, brimming with the laughter, cries, and footsteps of so many lives springing from one woman's womb? Even so, while history tells of scattered cases where women reportedly bore 50 or even 60 children, none have officially surpassed Valentina's extraordinary record. Her story stands as a towering testament to the limits of human reproduction as we know it. And yet, even Valentina's unparalleled experience becomes but a faint shadow when we turn our gaze back to the dawn of humanity and contemplate the life of Eve. According to the biblical narrative, Eve lived for around 900 years, nearly a full millennium. Can you begin to fathom the sheer possibility of childbearing over such an immense span of time? Ancient traditions assure us that Eve's fertility was entirely without equal, unmatched by any woman before or since. They paint a picture of the mother of all living as uniquely blessed, her body continually yielding new life as humanity's only path forward in a still young world. Might you wonder how many countless sons and daughters she cradled over centuries, guiding tiny hands to walk upon the very soil God had cursed yet still loved? This comparison between Eve and even the most fertile modern women highlights something profound about the human story. Eve's life was more than just long, it was foundational, a sacred vessel through which all nations and generations would one day arise. Isn't it humbling to consider that every person you've ever known, loved, or even glimpsed in passing ultimately traces their lineage back to this one remarkable woman whose womb bore not dozens but perhaps hundreds, forming the living rivers of humanity that still flow through time? In this light, even the most astonishing modern records become tender reminders of how deeply God's command to be fruitful and multiply has echoed through every age. Furthermore, according to long-standing traditional beliefs passed down through Jewish, Christian, and early historical writings, Adam and Eve were thought to have brought forth an impressively large family. Many of these traditions commonly estimate that they had at least 70 children, sons and daughters together, a figure often mentioned as a kind of symbolic minimum. Yet can you imagine standing in the midst of such a vast family, watching dozens upon dozens of brothers and sisters grow up, marry, and begin new lines that would eventually spread across every corner of the earth? Even more intriguing are the speculations from various ancient teachers and chroniclers who dared to look beyond these modest figures. They suggested that because Adam and Eve possessed a kind of original vigor, bodies formed by God's own hands, untouched by generations of accumulated frailty, their health and vitality must have been astonishing. Their lives were not only extraordinarily long by modern standards, reaching nearly a full millennium, but also exceptionally robust. In a cultural setting where the divine command to be fruitful and multiply, Genesis 1:28, stood as humanity's primary mandate, is it so hard to believe they might have had hundreds of children over centuries? Picture Eve, the mother of all living, moving through her days with a strength and grace that no later woman could match, guiding countless little ones as they learn to speak, to work the soil, to offer prayers to the God their parents once walked beside in Eden. Imagine Adam watching fields slowly fill with the laughter and labor of his many sons and daughters, each new face a testament that God's plan for humanity was still unfolding despite the sorrow of lost paradise. Doesn't it awaken a quiet awe to think that every family gathering you've ever known, every bustling reunion, every table crowded with laughter and stories, echoes faintly back to these first gatherings of Adam and Eve's own children? In their overflowing household, we glimpse not just the start of countless family lines, but the breathtaking scale of God's intention to fill the earth with life, love, and the possibility of redemption. Perhaps their story gently reminds us even today that our lives, no matter how ordinary they may seem, are part of a much grander tapestry that began with these earliest parents and continues to ripple through history all the way to us. In Genesis 6:1, we come across a quiet yet profound observation: when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. Often when this passage is read, the focus quickly shifts to the mysterious Nephilim, or to the unfolding drama of human wickedness that prompted the flood. Yet hidden within this verse is a tender glimpse into how the family of Adam blossomed across the earth, sons and daughters spreading out, building lives, and giving rise to the world's first communities. Have you ever paused to wonder about these countless daughters whose beauty and presence filled the early world with new songs, laughter, and dreams? An especially fascinating aspect that slips by most readers is how both the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve carried within them the seeds of diverse ethnic lineages. According to many ancient traditions, Adam and Eve themselves were a sort of original mixed race, a perfect fusion that contained within their very bodies the genetic tapestry of all humanity yet to come. Isn't it astonishing to think that from this one union flowed the rainbow of complexions, features, and cultural identities we see woven across our world today? This profound truth finds its echo not only in Scripture but also in the discoveries of modern science. The study of mitochondrial DNA has led geneticists to speak of a mitochondrial Eve, a woman from whom all living humans descend on their maternal line. Although this does not pinpoint Eve of Genesis with clinical precision, it marvelously confirms that humanity is indeed bound together by shared ancestry. Doesn't this deepen our awe, knowing that beneath the vast mosaic of ethnicities and races, we all trace back to a single mother? So when we marvel at the countless ethnic groups, languages, and rich cultural customs that fill our planet, we're actually witnessing the unfolding of God's creative brilliance that was planted at the very beginning. Could it be that our differences are not barriers but sacred brushstrokes of divine artistry, each reflecting a facet of God's image uniquely? Perhaps understanding this helps us cherish not just our own heritage but also the breathtaking variety that makes humanity so beautiful, reminding us that in the deepest sense we are truly one vast family descended from the same father and mother who once walked hand in hand east of Eden. And so as we stand at the end of this quiet journey through the forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve, we're left with more than just ancient names and whispered traditions. We're left with a breathtaking realization that from one family formed by God's very hands, all the nations, tribes, and tongues of the world have flowed like rivers from a single source. Isn't it extraordinary to think that no matter how different our skin, our languages, or our customs might be, we all share a heartbeat that first began in the dust of Eden? Their story is not just a tale locked away in the distant past. It's a living reminder that diversity is not a flaw but a masterpiece of divine intention. Each face you see, each culture you admire, carries within it an echo of Adam and Eve's early children, of Seth, Enos, Azura, Aan, and countless others whose lives quietly wove the fabric of humanity long before history learned to write their names. In a world that so often lets divisions overshadow unity, could their story not gently nudge us to see each other with renewed wonder and compassion? Perhaps this is the lesson their lives whisper to us, that beyond every difference stands the truth of a shared beginning, a single God who breathed life into all of us, longing for us to walk together in love. And if God so carefully crafted every lineage, might He not also have a unique purpose for you, woven from the same eternal story that began with Eden's first family? If this journey has touched your heart or sparked questions you'd love to explore further, I invite you to become part of our growing family here. Leave a comment below, maybe type 777 if you feel blessed by these hidden stories. Subscribe for more mysteries and revelations from Scripture, and don't forget to share this video so others can rediscover the wonder of where we all began. Thank you truly for spending this time with me. May God's grace cover you. May His face shine upon you, and may you always remember that you are a precious thread in the vast tapestry that began with the very first breath of life on earth. Blessings to you, dear friend. Until we meet again.